we're doing a design workshop today. That's where you send me images of your space and then I show you what I would do if it were my space. I'll walk you through the whole design process in my brain and see what it can look like in the end. And today we're doing this exterior. Now without the tree, we can see the front of the house a little bit better and we can tell that this is a pretty classic 90s Colonial Revival American home. She describes her style as modern and traditional, but she's really drawn to cobblestones and the English countryside look. This is another of the inspiration images, and this is the last one. So they don't feel all that English countryside. These are very classically colonial. The only difference that I feel like might lend itself a little bit to the English countryside aesthetic is the stone cladding. It is important to note that American colonial architecture is actually derived from a lot of English Georgian architecture. It just evolved based on the location and the materials available and the construction methods used. A lot of it is also built on a lot of architectural styles from all over the world. Since people were moving to America from all over, you have Dutch influence, German influence, English influence, and so much more. So for American colonial architecture, you'll see a lot of symmetry. You'll often see shutters. Brick is a very common material. Clean, crisp, white painted trim, whereas the English countryside look is a little bit softer. You'll notice the clean, white, crisp of American colonial architecture is a higher contrast to this soft color palette here. Something else you'll see that softens up the look is the vines on the building or even the gravel path, the stones on the building itself, and there isn't as much contrast in the color palette, allowing for a softer, more subdued look that blends into the countryside. So let's get started. She told me that they are planning on redoing the exterior of the house, redoing the windows, and possibly a new roof. So this is a great time to sort of reimagine what the house could look like. And I'm going to suggest removing this, and it will allow her to have the facade that she's looking for. There's a bunch of different ways that you can do this. You can do it without the gable roof. You can just do a flat top roof with even like a little decorative fence over top, but that lends itself to be very American colonial. I want to have a few elements that are a little less decidedly American versus European, and I feel like this style can lend itself either way. But I also wanted to call out this area over here. This is just an attic vent. It's just a very small whatever detail. Every single element on the front of this house is a decision. Something like this could be highlighted or accented in a completely different way that adds to the character of your house. But if you have the funds to do it, I would explore other options and can add to the overall look of the house. And if you add it in one place, I would add it into others too. The sides of this is also a gable style roof, so I would consider adding a decorative detail to all of these. And she is looking at replacing all of the windows, and you could just go ahead and replace them with the classic double hung window. This is the most classically American window style that I see often in old world European architecture is a casement style window. People have casement style windows in the US, but they're just not nearly as common as the double hung. And I actually really love the look of a double casement. I feel like this sketch isn't really doing them justice, so I'll put an image on the screen. I like that you're able to open them outwards. I think it gives it a really like almost romantic storybook look. This style of window wasn't as popular in the US, but I suspect it's because the climate here is a little different. But with modern window technologies, you can easily apply a screen, especially a hidden or recessed screen that you can roll out and still be able to use. And they're a little bit stronger, therefore a gust of wind is not going to ruin your hinges. Or you could have them open indoors if you like. You can do a crank style, or you can open them out and prop them open with a stay. Either way, I think this is worth considering. I would love to replace my windows with a casement style window. I think it would be so charming, and it's just a little different. But the shutters are definitely something worth keeping. But as we discussed in a previous video, I do want you to consider making sure that you have all of the proper shutter hardware. At a minimum, I do think hinges and a shutter dog would give you the look that you're looking for and make it feel the most authentic. Now, I know this feels crazy. All the inspiration images have this double fireplace. So if you love fireplaces and you're already redoing the exterior of your house, I think adding chimneys would really add to the look and really give you this sort of like symmetrical, balanced look that is very common in the American colonial and also the English Georgian style home. This section insets a little bit, and she has a bench out here and there's a door right here. I think creating a little courtyard would be really nice. So I went ahead and I added this lamp post as a sort of extension off of the main path walkway. Another element that people often forget is hardware on a door. It's basically like jewelry. Like you could have a door knocker, a mail slot, a kick plate, and the door handle all sort of add to the overall look. I would be pretty consistent with the materials you use. I do oil rubbed bronze and copper together would really create this really nice old world look. Lastly, in order to get that final look to tie this all together and make it feel a little bit more English countryside is with how you do your landscaping. One of the things that you'll see in a lot of images for English manor estates will be hedges. Lots of very nicely manicured hedges. Right now I've got hedges along the fronts of the houses and then lower boxwoods following the path. I think this could be really nice to creating that manicured English countryside look. And even topiaries are also a good add for this. With your location in the Northeast, I think having hydrangeas would be really nice. I even added a limelight hydrangea tree over here to bring some height into this area. But this way you have some blooms in the summertime, but then it stays really manicured and clean the rest of the year since these hedges would be evergreen. Another element that you can add would be a stone bench or even like a stone fountain. Now, a lot of the English countryside inspiration images I was looking at have vines. You don't have to do vines, but I would definitely consider it because I love them, especially if you do non-aggressive vines that are a little bit easier to control. I think that will definitely soften up the look of the house and lend itself to feel a little bit more old world. Once you start getting into the details, that's when you start being able to differentiate the slight differences between American Colonial and sort of an English European look. And one of the things is that crispy white trim lends itself to be a little bit more colonial. However, if you want to try something a little bit different, I would consider doing like a cream color or taupe color. We didn't talk about it. The cladding of the house, in my opinion, I think a stone would be really beautiful, but I think it would look really, really stunning, and I would pull colors from that. So a crispy white would give you a nice contrast to that stone, but if you want to lean a little bit more old world, I would pull maybe a taupe or a cream or gray, depending on the style of stone that you go with, and use that as your accent color, as your window color, as all of the trim color. There are different styles of trim that you can do to really elevate the space. American trim tends to be a little bit more clean and simplified, whereas if you want to lean a little bit more old world, going with something a little bit more ornate, if you're going to do that, I would recommend doing the cream and taupe on all of that trim as well. I think ultimately with the look of this space, based on the inspiration images, I think we're going with more of a polished American with European charm look, with clean symmetry, with the shutters, but with softer features, a softer wandering path. The vines will soften up the building, the stone will soften up the building, but you'll have the very sort of like strict symmetry that you'll see in a lot of colonial homes. Another element to dive further into it would be the shutters and the color choices behind those. I think one of the colors that you'll see most commonly in a lot of colonial style homes is going to be like a black or a charcoal. You could also do like navy. Like there are other colors that are common, but black and charcoal historically I feel like is the most common. And then if you wanted the softer European look, I would again go with more of like a taupe or a tan, again pulling from the natural tones that are already going to be in the stone. And then with the front door, if you want a colonial look, you could also go for like a bright red. Black too could match. I think bright red is pretty classically American for a front door style, or more of a European style. Going for a soft color, you could go for like a soft sage green or like a gray green, something to complement the stonework. Either way, a deep green, a deep blue, a deep red, even a black or a charcoal, those are all pretty classic, and I feel like they can be a little ambiguous between American or European, which I think would be perfect, since the house is kind of leaning between both sides anyways. In order to save money, you'll see on a lot of American homes, they might do like the exact front facade is brick, but then all of the other sides are siding, and that's to save on cost. Now, doing stone like this, I think would absolutely be beautiful, but I think it's important to wrap around on the sides, and I think that is really important to getting that really holistically European look, is to wrap this all the way around. I think this looks more expensive and it looks so much nicer, but there are other ways to save money too. The entire building doesn't have to be this stone. Notice that the original house has this like little side part of the house that pops out. That's where I'd bring in this sort of like white or cream color. You could do a lap. I think actually like a lap siding would still look really nice here, and I think it would contrast with the stone really well. I tried mocking it up really quick in ChatGPT, and this is what I got, and I think this kind of breaks up the look that I was talking about. And here it is a little bit more accurately with the vines on the walls and the manicured yard, the dark shutters, and the whole like new porch and the lap siding on the side of the building. I think this looks really good. I'm really happy with how this turned out. But if you want to see it with some lighter shutters, this is basically the same thing, but with just more of like a cream colored, softer look. I'm really happy with how all of this came together. If you have any submissions you'd like to send to me, go ahead and DM them to me. I will be setting up a form with the link in my bio within the next week so that it's easier to submit, and that way I can keep a little bit more organized. Anyways, see you next week.